And it must be time.
Absolutely.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is time for WordPress Plugins A to Z, not Z.
It's episode 640, and in this episode, WP Plugins A to Z, the now and future of WordPress through our lenses. No WordPress news this week, though, all coming up next on WordPress Plugins from A to Z. WordPress. It's the most popular content management and website solution on the internet. And with over 80,000 plugins to choose from, how do you separate the junk from the gems? Join us for a weekly, unrehearsed conversation about the latest and greatest in WordPress plugins. This is WordPress Plugins from A to Z. Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you happen to be hiding out there on the globe today. Coming to you direct from the brewery overlooking beautiful southern Vancouver Island. I'm John Overall, and with me is the ever lovely
Overall.
And we have the usual great show for you. Of course, it's New Year's. Happy New Year's to you all. We are just having a grand old time. There it is. There you go. Yeah, we had to get that in there. And I can't believe I'm looking at this and I was like, episode 640. I'm thinking I've done 640 episodes of this show.
You sure have. Two more and it's 642.
This is just insane that I've been doing this for that long. You know, week in, week out, every other weekend, week out. It's like I've been doing it for so bloody long. It's like I can't believe I've managed to keep it going and going and going and going. But, you know, it's been really great. Loads of fun. It is the new year. We're in 2025 now, folks. We're coming to you from the past into the future because this is pre-recorded. And we may be suffering from a hangover, recovering from whatever. I mean, God only knows
visiting the in-laws.
Visiting the in-laws, you know, doing all kinds of crazy things as most people do on New Year's time. You know, it's all kinds of great stuff. It is a new year, new dreams, new ideas, new things going forward. And in this show here, we're going to be talking to you about our thoughts on WordPress. But with all of that being done, I think I've shared enough for this.
Thank you for sharing, John. Now get down from that soapbox.
No.
I'm just picturing one of those giant hooks going yoink.
Well, no, what I'm picturing when I hear it is once upon a time, there was a place in Britain or in London called Speaker's Corner where they had boxes that people could step on and start giving speeches, whatever speech they wanted. And that was carried over into the colonies in the New World. If you had something to say, you could go down to the town central court. What do they call those? Court, the central court in downtown, and they had a box. You could step on it. You could just start speaking. And it was a soapbox. It was considered a soapbox. That was where the term comes from, getting up on the soapbox and just speaking. And if you could gather a crowd and they would listen to you, you might change minds. But if you were spouting shit and they thought you were an idiot, they just walk by and laugh at you, maybe throw tomatoes at you.
Okay.
But they tell you, enough of that, get down off that soapbox. So that's where the term comes from. It actually dates back to the medieval times where people used to be able to go down. And it happened just after the Magna Carta when people were allowed to speak their mind and the king couldn't lop off their head for it.
Well, that explains the boxes people stand up on in all those movies.
Yeah, it's a soapbox. So there you go. There's your trivia for today, folks.
Well, every time I hear it, I just think of someone getting yoinked off the stage with one of those giant shepherd hooks.
Yeah, that's the really bad comedian who they just needed to get him off the stage, and they yank him off the stage with a shepherd hook.
Yoink. Well, welcome to episode 640. And we are looking at a little bit of the past, not much. We covered the past more in the last show. For this show, we're actually looking more into the future. We are going to be talking about what we see coming down the pike, and we're going to be talking about our thoughts and opinions about where WordPress is likely heading.
Absolutely.
So just a continuation from the last show that we recorded, if you don't have a banana to pull out of your pocket to create a conversation, you can always bring up the show.
Yeah.
Bring up the random stuff that we talk about, because, you know, we do bring up really random things.
Yeah, we do. we get random sometimes. Last show was pretty random.
And there's another idea that I have here.
Mm-hmm.
Go look in between the couch cushions. You can find some really interesting things between the couch cushions.
No,
And then just
no,
shove all that in your pockets and
no,
then bring
don't.
that out in conversation.
Don't do that, man. What's in between the couch cushions should stay there. It's like a dead man's zone. It's like the stuff vanishes in there. The only thing you want out of between the couch cushions is money.
But there's so many interesting things in the dimension of between the couch cushions.
I'm sure there is. I don't want to know.
Okay, a couple of reminders before we start the show today.
Well, what's this difference between toddlers and teenagers? You're not even reading your notes.
Oh, I am, but it didn't fit what I was saying, so I just kind of skipped over it. And the difference between toddlers and teenagers is nothing, except that teenagers know how annoying they're being. That's the only difference.
Oh, okay.
So, reminders for today are, remember that sparklers are only for outside. Fire and wood and other materials in the house will burn very, very well. So sparklers are only for outside.
Yes.
Do not leave your partner unattended for too long when they have access to grandma's eggnog or any other tasty drinks. The intrusive thoughts may win them over when you're not looking.
Yeah, they might.
Fizzy water and juice makes great pop for kids. Fizzy water, juice, and a bit of additional flavor can wind up being a fantastic wobbly pop for the adults.
Yes. Yes. Especially rum.
Yep. And we hope that everyone has made or will make a serious racket at midnight. If you listen for a moment during the New Year's celebrations, people over in New Zealand may actually be able to hear us here in Canada as we all go outside and scream our bloody heads off for a full 5 minutes.
They might be, but
part of that screaming is just screaming about how freaking cold it is. So.
Yeah, that's true. But they might have already done that because this show is being played after New Year's.
That's true. So I should have said this on the last show.
This show has to show up in 2025. It can't show up in 2024.
Right. I keep forgetting that because of where we're recording it right now.
Yeah, like I said, we're recording from the past. So, we're making sure that we can take our week off from Christmas to just after New Year's.
Yeah, because we're totally going to get that week off. Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's the hope.
We're going to try anyway.
It happened to me once, maybe when I was 12.
Well, that's it for reminders. If I missed anything important, be sure to let me know, and I'll add it to the next year's New Year's reminders.
Okay.
And our featured artist for this week is Grok.
Yep. Even though when he was creating the art, he was broken, let's hope he's fixed by this show.
Hopefully. Poor lobotomized Grok.
Yep.
Okay, so I have a WordPress tip for today. It's actually, I have a serious question for everyone out there who is over the age of 20. When was the last time that you grabbed a toboggan and went sledding? Or when was the last time that you raced kids down a hill, made a snow angel, or gave your buddy a proper snow face wash? When was the last time you went out and had fun in the snow? The question is actually kind of a serious question because I was thinking about it, and I haven't actually gone sledding since I was 7, haven't raced someone since I was in my mid-teens, and I have not given my buddy a proper snowy face wash since I was in my late teens. And snow angel making, I think I might have done that in my early 20s last. Why not? Because I've been busy, and it's probably the same reason that you are giving right now for not doing any of this stuff for 10 or more years, because you've been busy. Busy doing what? Making a living, paying bills, working overtime so I can be the best in my field that I'm capable of being, setting things up for the kids, being taxi mom or taxi dad. Just busy. Well, my advice to you today is to stop it. Stop being busy. It's the bloody holidays. Get out there, race your kids, and lose. Watch yourself because, you're probably going to fall and you don't want to break a bone or anything. You're getting old. But go have fun. Get out there. Make snow angel. Call your buddy over. Force them to stop being busy too. I don't know. Threaten them with telling a big dark secret or something.
Yeah.
Get them over. Get into a snowball fight. Make snow angel with your friends, family, kids. Dance in the middle of the night with your family and friends beneath the clear winter sky and enjoy the fresh, cold, dry air. Go and live a little. Forget about being busy for at least one day. That is my advice to you.
Yeah, good advice. Very good advice. Have fun with that.
It's time to donate to WP Plugins A-Z.
How can you help? I hear people asking out there in the worlds of the internets. Well, you can come around and let us give you an interview, have us review your plugin, or send us something to read for you. Donate some of your treasure or your time our way, and we'll make sure that you receive an equal value in return. If you are interested, you can go to our website, WP Plugins AtoZ.com, click on Time, Talent, or Treasure in our main menu, and you can go and read the options for what is available yourself. If you feel like reaching out to us, we do have a real brick and mortar address that you can even send physical items into. Or, you can stick to the virtual addresses because we have those written down here for you too. Time to put on the lenses and go.
Absolutely. Let's run with it.
Glitch, glitch, glitch.
Squirrel!
I like the squirrel.
Oops, wrong button.
You sure about that? I don't know. I kind of feel like WordPress has been shooting himself in the head lately.
Yeah, pretty much. 2 to the head, man. 2 to the head. Suicide with 2 bullets to the head.
Yeah, there's been a lot of changes. The other thing that there was a big change to is the PHP change over the last year.
Oh, that one there was a mostly irrelevant sort of thing compared to what we're dealing with.
Yeah, right now the main thing that we're dealing with is everything that's been going on with Mullenweg.
Yeah.
Like one of the massive effects of what he's been doing has been an exodus from the WordPress community. There are people who've been there since the beginning, who were like cornerstones of WordPress, keeping it going and happy and healthy, and they're just gone.
They were core contributors.
Exactly. And they're gone because they are saying that the WordPress community is not mentally healthy. Like if it were a partner in a relationship, WordPress community would have a restraining order kind of unhealthy. I totally agree. But like these people who've been there since the beginning, what Mullenweg is doing now is the last straw. They can't take it anymore. They're gone.
Yeah. Yeah, that has been one of the problems for it started in October, I think. Late September, early October.
I think it started in October, yeah.
Yeah, late September, early October. But it has changed the community in many, many ways. And it's opened the eyes to many of us that have been in this community. Like I haven't been there since the absolute beginning, but damn near. I've been working with WordPress since version 2.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, a lot of us thought that, for instance, the WordPress.org website was owned by the WordPress Foundation. We found out differently.
Yeah.
And we've all been dealing with the benevolent dictator, which is Matt Mullenweg. And for the longest time, he was a benevolent dictator. But things have changed. And so it's a lot of things that are going in a direction that seems wrong. But on the other hand, it's going to seem right in many ways, as we'll discuss here soon. We'll let you finish off your intro here.
Oh dear, I've lost where I was.
I think the direction of WordPress is currently heading is similar to Classic Press. That's where you were.
I was about to say it, but then you started talking.
Oh.
Can't even let silence happen for like a second, can you?
I can. Maybe a second. Sometimes only 500 milliseconds.
So yeah, I do actually think it's starting to go the way of Classic Press. Like Classic Press was a great thing when it was going for a while, but like we mentioned in the last show, Classic Press ended up forking a more modern version of WordPress, and since then I think Classic Press has just continued to go downhill and non-existent.
Yeah.
In this case, I think that WordPress is going to be fantastic for another year, maybe 2, and then it's going to start seriously falling apart because so many of its cornerstone coders, volunteer grunt workers, and the plugins that have really made it worthwhile are they're just going.
Well, go ahead. Okay, I'll let you finish.
I'm hearing chatter about other platforms that are similar to WordPress and the idea of free use and open code, although without the dictatorship idealism of the ones who started it. Like like we have right now for WordPress. At least that's how they are right now. Hopefully they stay that way. And for the plugins, I foresee repositories popping up all over the place. Now, this could be both good or bad. Good because of easier access, although bad because alongside of more access comes the spammers, the hackers, the ones who take absolute advantage of everything. And we'll have to really keep our guard up. I would like to see WordPress recover, but I'm not sure if it's going to. So, and then the last two are separate points. So.
Yeah, okay. Well, let's go back here to your other point about WordPress heading similar to Classic Press.
Mm-hmm.
Now, where it was headed with what happened with Classic Press, because I was there for that one. I was right behind Classic Press. I was starting to walk away from WordPress. What drew me back to WordPress was the plugin community, is what drew me back to WordPress. It was the plugins, and in particular, a specific plugin who made themselves solely compatible with WordPress, and they weren't compatible with Elementor or with Classic Press. And I needed it to be compatible to continue my development. But that is what happened. The other thing with Classic Press is Classic Press, there were several core developers that left with Classic Press for WordPress when WordPress went to Gutenberg. That's what started Classic Press, were core people from WordPress along with another group. Now, they chose a path of creation that was a near impossibility. They thought they could do things in a pure democracy. You cannot.
No.
Nothing can be done in a pure democracy. Absolutely nothing. You have
two wolves and a sheep voting on what's for dinner.
That's exactly what a pure democracy is. It's two wolves and a sheep voting on what's for dinner. And so you need a different organization. You need like a corporate structure where you have someone at the top who's responsible, but that someone at the top, if being problematic, can be removed fairly easily. Mm-hmm. That doesn't work in a dictatorship, even a benevolent dictator. You can't remove them at the top when they have all the keys and all the controls, which is where we're at now. So I don't see WordPress completely dying or disappearing the way of Classic Press. I believe it's going to lose ground, but I believe it's going to hold itself. At worst, it's going to drop to a 30% market share and hold around there. That's my belief in it.
So it'll become a zombie.
And no, it won't be a zombie. 30% market share is 1/3 of the market. Okay.
Oh, okay.
You know, right now, WordPress is 47% of the market share. WordPress is almost half the market for CMS systems out there. And so it's really super strong right now. It's going to drop back because there are people that are like, okay, I'm not here. We've lost some core developers. That's going to create problems for future code and what's going to happen with WordPress core. What could happen down the line is as they find a way to either smack Mullenweg into behaving or find a way to pull him back and remove him from areas. Like there are ways they can do it. It's like Mullenweg is not a pure dictator. He is culpable to his investors. He's got massive amounts of his. He was whining somewhere that these guys are just getting what's that money called from investors?
Donations?
No.
Investments?
Well, there's a specific term for the big giant money fields of like BlackRock and whatnot.
I have no idea. Grants?
Venture capitalists. He was whining that WP Engine was financed by venture capitalists, but at the same time, he didn't mention the fact that he's also financed by venture capitalists.
Huh.
Most of his money is from venture capitalists. It's not all his money. He didn't raise all this money himself, and he didn't build this business all by himself. He used venture capital.
Black?
What's that?
Pot kettle black?
Yeah, pot kettle black. Yes, pot kettle black. But what's happened is he ultimately has to answer to his venture capitalists who want a return on their investment. So, and if he starts costing them money, they're going to slap him down in place. It's simple. You can have all the business in the world, but eventually you have to answer to your clients or whoever provides your income. It doesn't matter if you're self-employed or whatever, you eventually answer to somebody where your income comes from. And if you piss off those people, they slap you down or they pull their money, one of the two. So eventually he's got to do something right. Now, he's trying to do some stuff, and that's a whole nother read unto itself. We're not going to go down into that path about the trademarks that Automatic has applied for, which is part of what all these lawsuits are about, but nobody's even talking about that problem. So at any rate, go look into the trademarks that Automatic has filed the last year and a half, and then you can see what the lawsuits are all about. But that's not what's in the news. So at any rate, the other thing is that your chatter about other platforms and their free use of open chord, yeah, they're here and there, and some of them will manage to make it, some of them won't. You've got the competition. The main competition for WordPress right now is Wix, Squarespace, and I can't remember the third one. Those are the main competitions for WordPress. Oh, Shopify. Right. Shopify. That's what it is. It's
Shopify.
Yes.
Huh.
Wix.
I don't think I've even heard of that one.
Shopify is huge. They're the one that's driving that's going against WooCommerce.
Okay.
Because Shopify.
I guess I have seen it, and I just haven't really absorbed the information about it because I don't work with it.
No, well, I don't work with either, but it's something that we're going to learn to do in the next year because you can integrate Shopify into a WordPress website, and if you do that, you can increase your business tenfold. So that's something we're going to be looking at in the coming year because there's a lot of people that are in Shopify and they don't want to move from it because it's so easy to build out your e-commerce store, but it's piss poor for doing a website. But Shopify integrates into WordPress beautifully. Shopify's created specific plugins for integrating into WordPress because they knew it could work well. Their main competition is WooCommerce. So at any rate, that's something coming down the pike. But those are corporations. Those are run as corporations from the get-go, which means they have a whole different structure and a way of doing things, which is why they've been growing steadily. For plugin repositories, we'll be talking about that with more of the stuff that I have to say. And there are already repositories popping up. And there's going to be some really interesting things that I think are coming in the world of plugins because plugins is WordPress. If it wasn't for plugins, WordPress wouldn't exist.
I absolutely agree with that.
It's like WordPress would still be delegated to what it came from. I can't even remember. WordPress was forked originally from a blogging platform. And then what happened?
Why it's open.
Well, that's why it's open source, is because it was forked from open source.
Yeah.
So it has to stay open source. That's just the way of open source. If you fork from open source, you got to stay open source. That's the way it works. But it was forked from that. And what happened was Mullenweg and the other guy who started it, because Mullenweg didn't start it by himself. He had a partner in this, though his partner became silent about the second or third year into it. Just said, I'll just collect the money and let you have all the glory. I don't care.
There's always a partner, always a silent partner.
Yeah, well, almost always. Even Steve Jobs had Wozniak.
Exactly. There's always a silent partner.
And even fucking Bill Gates, I can't remember the guy that he started with.
Nobody can remember the silent partner.
No, it's like Wozniak.
But they're always the brains.
They were the brains behind it because you have to have a brain behind it, and then you have to have a front man who is gregarious and loves to push himself out to the public. And so that's what it always takes. But anyway, that's an aside. So there are repositories, and there's going to be some interesting things coming because of the plugins. And WordPress is plugins. When they hit about year 2 or 3, about the same time I discovered WordPress was when plugins were starting to take hold. And that's when I created WP Plugins AtoZ. And at that time, there were only 9,000 plugins available. That was it. That was the whole collection of WordPress plugins was 9,000. And I watched it grow year over year over year over year until we hit over 80,000. And then they've had to, as the developers of those plugins, like, oh, I got a real job, I'm no longer interested, I went a different way, lives changed. They just abandoned their plugins, and that left a big hole in WordPress. And as technology advanced, that created other problems. But plugins are going to continue because that is the one key component that WordPress has that nobody else has. You can turn WordPress into any website imaginable. If you can imagine it, there's plugins you can plug into it. Or if you know a coder, you can have them create the plugin you need to turn the website into what you want it to do. There is no limit to what WordPress can do.
This is also a blessing. This is a blessing and disguise both at once, though, because the whole idea of plugins has been created, tested, tried, and true. Well, what's to stop other platforms from doing the same thing? That's why I think that WordPress may actually end up going the way of the dodo.
Okay, well, here's the thing: is other platforms have done it.
Okay.
But they made it too hard to use the plugins.
Aha.
They didn't make it as simple. Like, well, WordPress was headed towards that hard path, and then they went, wait a minute, stop. And then they went, well, what if we made it so we created a central repository? People could look up a plugin, click install, it installed the plugin instantly, and they were instantly able to use it.
And what's to stop other companies from gaining this ability and taking on the wisdom of WordPress?
Nothing's to stop them. They just haven't done it. And the ones that have tried it have not been able to make it successful. Because one of the things you have to do is you have to create a community of people willing to submit those plugins. They have to submit free ones. Okay, because it doesn't work with premium plugins because people are like, well, I don't know what yours does. And how do I know? I need to test it to see what happens. I need to test to see if this plugin will provide me at least part of what I need to do before I spend money. WordPress created the freemium plugin. Like, if you go back far enough in my shows, I predicted the rise of the freemium plugin. I saw it coming before it came because it was starting. There were a couple of them that were free, that were freemium. There were only a few plugins that managed to make money from the get-go as premium plugins. Gravity Forms was one. But they put in a shit ton of money in promotions and advertising. And they also gave out dirt cheap lifetime licenses and dirt cheap licenses that if you continue to pay every year, it was dirt cheap. It's like, I'm not going to tell anyone what I pay for my Gravity Forms license, but right now, if I had to pay for it, I would be paying 3 and 4 times as much as I pay for it now. Because I bought my license when they were brand new. And they grandfathered me in like they promised to do. They were one of the few companies that grandfathered you into the licensing scheme. I had several of them where I bought lifetime licenses or dirt cheap, and they promised to keep it that way as long as I paid it. And then they started raising rates and abandoned me. And it's like, oh, fuck you. I don't really need your plugin anyway. I was just grateful Gravity Forms didn't do that. Like, I've been paying for Gravity Forms now for 11 years. You know, but they made it, WordPress made it easy. It's like, and then it's like, okay, put your free plugin here and then sell your premium version. And the free version has just enough to tell if the plugin's going to work for you. And if you need that extra, you buy the premium. Sometimes, about 50% of the time, the free version will do exactly what you need. But the other 50% it won't. So you got to go buy the premium version. And then the other key was setting the license fees at a reasonable fee every year. The ones that set their license too high never made any money, never went anywhere. The ones that set it too low got overwhelmed. The ones that hit that perfect medium,
they have survived.
They have survived and they've become extremely successful.
Like Gravity Forms.
Yeah, like Gravity Forms. Like Gravity Forms now, their license is a little pricey, but it's so worth it because it's but they also what they can do for you. But they also have different levels of their license. So we get this much here for this license level, get this much more, get this much more. It depends on what you need. And they've figured out the packages for what people need as they move up the line. Now, that's why I said I don't think WordPress is going to die and have to recover. I think it's going to possibly fall down to maybe a 30% market share, maybe 25% market share. But that'll be where it bottoms out. It's going to continue along because there's too many people that have invested in the WordPress community. There's too many businesses that are invested in WordPress as a program that runs their business. Their business may only be, maybe they only make $100,000 a year, but there's businesses that make millions, $20-30 million a year off it. I think that's WP Engine makes $20-30 million a year off of it.
Yeah, but I mean, how many building platforms like this have you seen come and go? Ones that made it really big for a while, businesses became very invested in, and then they had to move off of it because it ended up vanishing.
None that became very big, and most of them, there was a war back in the beginning between all the platforms. It was between, hang on a sec. Let's bring up some information here. CMS platforms. CMS platforms, images. That should give me a list of them. Okay, there was Joomla, Drupal, Magento, Blogger, and WordPress. Okay, those were all the ones in the beginning. Joomla was moving ahead faster than WordPress. I started using Joomla. I remember using Joomla. And what happened was they made it too hard to do updates and add plugins. And Drupal was where I went to next because they were doing very well too. And they still exist, and they're still very hard to use. They've never simplified their systems. And WordPress, on the other hand, went, wait a minute, we're going the wrong way, because WordPress was starting to be hard, and then they reversed course and made it simpler and made it easier to access their stuff.
That's a good option.
So the other ones, what happened was this was during the early growth era. And now we've got Wix, Shopify, Squarespace, and I can't remember the other one I talked about a little while ago. You got PrestaShop. It's like there's dozens of them right now.
Yeah.
There's dozens of them. And the thing is none of them hold a candle to WordPress, and none of them are so good. They don't have a large enough community with the variations in plugins and the ease of building a plugin to insert into WordPress. And that's the thing.
And yet so many of the cornerstone people from WordPress have bailed, and they're leaving to go to other platforms like this one called Hugo that I've seen people talking about. Yeah. So that's why I think it's going to end up costing it.
It's going to end up costing it. Well, as I said, it's going to cost it. It's going to cost it from a 47% market share to a 25% market share.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
But you don't think it's actually going to go the way of the dodo? It's
not going to go the way of the dodo because the community is too large. If 1/3 or even 1/2 of the WordPress community moves somewhere else, you would still have the largest platform out there as far as developers go.
Oh, that's true.
You know, and you would still have all the stuff that those people have created still in the WordPress community that other people can pick up and run with.
Okay, makes sense.
Because you think about it, it's like I've done this a lot in the last 2 years. Plugins that have been abandoned that I really liked, I've taken them down. I've taken them to a developer and said, I really need this. Can you fork it for me and bring it up to date? And they bring it and fork it for me. It doesn't cost that much because the heavy lifting for making the plugin work has already been done. Now all you got to do is make it work better.
Makes sense.
So, and that's the joy of open source. And that's why I don't think WordPress is going to die. Yes, it's going to die back, but it's not going to die. You know, I didn't see this when the reason I went to Classic Press was I was angry. And I was angry at what Matt had crammed down our throats. You know, he crammed Gutenberg down our throats. I thought that was going to be a killer for it, but it didn't even barely make a dent in WordPress. And yet the community is still complaining about that, you know, and to bring that to a point, that's your perfect example of how bad WordPress is with Gutenberg. Is there was a girl, and where this was a girl challenged Matt to a site building contest using Gutenberg, and he lost horribly to her. And not just bad, he lost. She did this all manually. Granted, she's the developer that, well, Matt understands. Like they give some excuses to Matt about her understanding JSON script, JavaScript, as well as template files and CSS. Well, Matt understands that stuff too, or he did. He probably hasn't used it much in the last several years because he's so busy being a executive. You tend to lose sight when you become an executive. You lose touch with the real work with stuff. But he still took this on. And yet he was using AI to help him build this. And he was having problems. He ran into problems with, what is it? Hang on a sec here. Like margins and padding. He couldn't get the margins and padding right in Gutenberg, which is a major function you need to know.
Yes.
And it is hard to do in Gutenberg. It's really hard to do this for tweaking things in there. He couldn't get it. He finally ended up surrendering. He got his ass handed to him really well by a girl. So,
which is awesome.
Yeah, which is awesome in one aspect and then not so much in another. But anyway, this is what's happened. It's like, and then hopefully a lot of communities like, well, hopefully Matt understands why everyone's been bitching about Gutenberg. Now that he's been forced to actually use it. Everyone's like, did he even use it when he crammed this down everyone's throat, or did he just think it was a great idea?
He just thought it was a great idea. It was new and shiny, and he thought it was pretty, and so he thought everybody will love it.
Yeah, well, the other reason he was doing that was Wix was starting to make big chunks out of WordPress, and Wix uses a builder very similar to Gutenberg.
Well, maybe what it is he's like those grandparents who get you the really ugly socks and sweaters, and they think you'll love it.
Yeah, well, that's pretty much what it was. And so I was angry about that along with a large chunk of the community, which is why I tried to leave with Classic Press, but Classic Press unfortunately didn't deliver, and I came back to WordPress.
They didn't hold up their end of the bargain.
No, they didn't hold up their end of the bargain. And I promoted them big time on this show, interviewed people, talked, and did everything I could to promote it. And unfortunately, they didn't do it. And now, there's going to be a nice new article on the new WP Pro A-Z website talking about why I'm back in WordPress and just into it now to make the best of it and continue it on the best I can. So that's all of that stuff there. And so we've had a whole lot of crazy going on here. Now that we've talked about a lot of the past and the other stuff, here's some of the other future I see happening in WordPress. And we've talked about the occasional flare up here and there of, well, what Matt did recently created more of a problem than any of his previous flare-ups before. It's not the first time Matt's flared up and been a douchebag to someone in the WordPress community and caused people to leave. This time
around, the first time that so many have left, and that he's scared off so many plugin developers and companies. Yeah.
Well, what's interesting, I've read a lot of the posts from the plugin developers that have pulled their plugin from the WordPress repository. They're not leaving WordPress.
No, but they're leaving the repository.
They're leaving the repository, and they're leaving it because they can no longer trust that it's going to be there when they need it.
Yeah.
Now, what I see happening, of course, I've talked about the 90,000 numbers back in the beginning of WordPress. WordPress is the new place to be, blah, blah, blah. What I see happening with repositories is we've already talked about in a few episodes back on our show, we talked about a brand new repository that I stumbled across and brought to the show.
Yeah, I remember that.
And there's going to be more of those repositories come up.
Yes.
And what I believe is going to happen is what they're going to need to do is, like, a plugin developer will no longer have one place to put his free version of his plugin. He will have multiple places to put it. And he will have to put it in multiple places.
And that's a positive aspect of this.
It's a positive aspect, but there's one negative aspect in this. Right now, the WordPress core, where everybody gets their free plugins, because hardly anybody goes hunting across the internet for WordPress plugins, except to a few key places like Envato and a couple others that built a good reputation for repositories. But all of those are premium plugins. There's no freebies there. All of those are premium. You have to pay for it and hope to hell you got what you want. Envato, I used to buy plugins from there, but I got tired of buying the hype of the plugin and then spending the money and ended up with a piece of shit. And unfortunately, most of the time, you don't really realize you have something that doesn't work until you've after passed the point of getting a refund. You know, because they say a 30-day refund. Well, 30 days is not enough time when you're building out a website to find out if it's the plugin for you. You need a month, you need 2, 3, sometimes 6 months before you find out if the plugin is going to deliver everything you need. You know, so what's going to happen though is because the free repository is only available through WordPress.org, I think someone somewhere is going to have to force through a lawsuit forcing WordPress to open up the WordPress core files to allow people to enter their favorite repository in there.
That'd be cool.
To search for it. That's what I feel is going to happen. I see that happening in the next 2 years. It's going to happen because these new repositories are going to open up, and sooner or later, venture capital is going to see one of these repositories as a moneymaker, and they're going to launch a lawsuit against Automatic, who manages the WordPress core, and say, you're open source. You need to open your source to allow people to choose what repository they want to get their stuff from. I think that's going to happen. I really do. And what that'll do is you could say this new repository we found, which is got free plugins on there, which basically they copied the free plugins from the WordPress core repository, but they've also got premium plugins. So what happens is you put this new repository in there that you want, not only will you see free plugins there, but you'll see the premium versions of that plugin there. You can download, test the free version, and if you like it, you can buy the premium version through them, where they make $1 or $2 and the developers make money.
And the genius behind this idea is going to take your idea and run with it.
Well, yeah, I'd love to take this idea and run, but I don't have the resources to do it. So hopefully...
No, I'm saying someone's going to listen, they're going to hear your idea and decide that they are the genius that's going to take your idea and run.
When I give ideas, folks, take them and run, man. Come back someday and donate to the show. You know, but
or mention us. Just mention that we exist.
Mention us, but I see that as a future for WordPress.
That actually is a really good idea, yeah.
Because somebody somewhere is going to do it. Somebody with some money or knows some money, because it's going to take money to do that. Because one, they're going to have to sue WordPress to open up the core, to force this action into the core, because WordPress is not going to want to put this in the core, because currently Automatic has a fucking lock on it. They have a, what's the word I'm looking for?
Hold?
It's not just
play?
a lock and a hold play. It's
I said claim.
Claim. No, that's not the right word. They have a soul lock on it. I'm not getting the right word. I can't find the word in my brain. I know it's there, but I can't find it. But because they have that, they have prevented all competition from doing that. And because Automatic is the only one that can commit code to the WordPress core. They are the only ones that can commit code to the WordPress core. Nobody else can commit code to the WordPress core. There is nobody else. It has to go through Automatic. They say it's not Automatic, it's the WordPress Foundation, but as we found out in this lawsuit, the WordPress Foundation is run and owned by Matt Mullenweg. You know, he is the sole person for the foundation, which is the owner of the WordPress core files. And nobody else can commit code to it. Now, yes, you can take the WordPress core and fork it and do what you want with it, but that doesn't help when you're trying to open it up to competition. And they have prevented competition everywhere in the core. They have done a very good job. So sooner or later, somebody's going to do this, and they're going to have venture capital money behind them where they can hire big power lawyers to come in, sue them, force them to have to make these changes to open it up as true open source. So that's what I see happening. That it'd probably be 1 or 2, maybe 3 years. But when that happens, what's going to happen is we're going to have a spike in WordPress repositories, and then it will settle down to about 5 very good WordPress repositories.
That makes sense. That's kind of what I was foreseeing for the repositories too.
Yeah.
A spike, then a settle.
Yeah, well, that's what everything is. There's a massive spike. I mean, think about it in the spike in my years in WordPress, watching like in the beginning of where WooCommerce, when WooCommerce came on the scene, there was 5, 6 different e-commerce plugins. And
Really?
yeah,
Okay.
and I was using one of 2 other, there were 2 other e-commerce plugins that I really liked, but they didn't do everything I needed. WooCommerce came along and they provided everything I needed. And
I see. Okay.
And so what happened?
So one of them is going to prevail.
One will prevail. One will prevail, but you'll have 5. That's the way it always works. You have a whole ton of people move in and do it, but eventually somebody figures out what needs to be delivered to people, and they deliver what everyone needs.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the one that wins. When you deliver everything someone needs, that's who wins. And then unfortunately, WooCommerce was bought by Automatic, who's greedy as fuck, and they drove all the prices of the add-ons for WooCommerce into the stratosphere.
Yeah.
And that actually forced more competition, because WooCommerce being open source, people could write the plugins that WooCommerce is charging a shit an arm and a leg for. And there's many people that have the same plugins that WooCommerce sells, but they charge like half the price for it, and those are the ones I buy because they work just as good as the ones from WooCommerce. So, and that's the way it works. That's what competition's all about. You can't overcharge for your services if people can create the same thing for a more reasonable fee. This is what I see is going to happen with it.
I like your vision more than my vision. My vision is more doom and gloom. Your vision is all like bright, sunshiny ponies and hope.
No, it's not bright, sunshiny ponies and hope, but it is hope as the fact that this community is way too large to die. If it was going to die, okay, maybe it would die, but it would take 5 to 7 years to completely die because there's so much momentum right now. It's really hard to kill it.
All right. It's more like rainbow unicorn poop and hope then.
Yeah. Let's see, what else have I missed here?
I don't know. You wrote a lot more than I did, which is kind of backward. Usually I'm the one who writes up a lot of stuff.
I cheated. I turned on my
dictation.
I turned on my dictation when I had ideas, and I just let it spill out. When I was done, I looked, did I really just have 1,000 words? Holy crap, because it's 1,000 words.
Oh, wow. That's impressive.
Yeah, well, when I dictate and I have brain flow, I can create stuff. The problem is my typing skills can't keep up with my brain, so that's what usually stumps me. Now that the dictation actually works and I can actually record it all, it's like, oh crap, then I can go through and refine it. I didn't have time to refine this, so that's why the ideas are kind of jumped around at the moment.
Yeah, the only other thing I brought to the show was a link to that girl who challenged Mullenweg.
Yeah, well, that's very useful, and it gives us an idea on how we got where we're at and where we may go. But I see it going different simply because of how I saw it, because I've been doing this for 16 years. Basically,
and patterns repeat.
I've been doing this basically since when I joined WordPress. WordPress had barely begun to take hold. Hardly anyone was acknowledging WordPress was useful. I was actually one of the ones that drank the Kool-Aid and promoted WordPress left, right, and center. I spoke at 5 WordCamps. I did meetups. Back
when they would let the peons speak?
Well, they still let peons speak if you're in a small enough town.
They let the preferred peons speak. They don't let any peons speak anymore.
That was when they'd let anyone speak. Now I'd never be invited now, no matter what I told them, because they'd look at my history and go, yeah, we don't want that asshole there.
Yeah, and I'm affiliated with you, so they wouldn't let me either.
Mm-hmm.
gotten real picky in their old age, haven't they?
Well, that's what happens. But that's what happens with any community is people hit their clicks and then they won't let anyone into their little clicks. And
It's amazing how much like chickens humans are.
Yes, they are. Humans are just like chickens. They create their little cliques and then they henpeck the other ones. And the other ones, if they don't have a clique, they just become loners and sad chickens. If they manage to, oh, you're being picked on, let's join our own little clique. So it is like that. Now, one thing I did manage to put in here was I put in something here. Where was that? Oh, this is the other prediction I'm making about plugins. And this is how plugin developers are going to continue to make their money, because the annual license fee is not always enough for the plugin developers to keep maintaining and producing the plugin. Because unfortunately, if you develop a plugin, you're going to have about 20% of your users need absolutely zero help from you. They're going to be developers that are doing this, and they just don't need you unless they have a real problem. And if they have a weird problem, and that's when they need you. You're going to have another, 20 leaves me 80. So you're going to have another 40% that'll need help from time to time. They're not that bad, but you're going to have 40% of your users are going to be absolute fucking idiots.
Yeah, who need help figuring out how to turn on.
And they need help all the bloody time. They're constantly asking you questions. They don't know how to read forums. They don't know how to self-help. They suck up a majority of your time, because the plugin developers, most of them will tell you all over in their stuff, most of their time goes to their support for their plugin. And the thing is, they have to bring in enough license fees every year to cover the cost of support, because they have to continue to pay their core developers to continually update and secure the plugin and bring new features online. But they have to have an entirely separate support staff that understands the plugin and can troubleshoot the 40% of the people that are eating up the majority of their money.
Yes.
So what this is going to do, and I've saw this once, I brought it to a show several episodes back about the subscriptions and how we're being burned out with subscriptions.
Yeah.
But what's going to happen is more and more plugins, and this is because I ran into a plugin that is moving to a subscription service. This is the first one I saw.
Okay.
But I can see more plugins moving to a subscription service for their license fee instead of the annual licensing fee. And they're going to make their monthly subscription service a lower amount, but over the course of the year, it's going to be more than if people paid an annual license fee.
That makes sense.
It'll be similar to what Adobe has done. It's like, I don't know, there's not a lot of people that remember Adobe before the subscription service. I used to buy Adobe software about every 2 or 3 years, and I'd pay about $1,800 for it. So that would get me $600 a year for it. But what Adobe did was they realized, wait a minute, people don't upgrade very often. They don't do it until their computers won't handle it anymore. Enough people have adopted the latest version to where they have to update because they can't open older files, et cetera, et cetera. This is how it worked. But what Adobe did was they looked at Microsoft's way of doing things in a subscription service. And they looked at several other people that had started the subscription services. And they went, wait a minute, if we charge $84 a month, it's still pretty cheap in the scheme of things, but most people don't think about their annual cost of it. Well, the annual cost of $84 a month is almost $1,000 a year. It's like, because it's 840 plus 100, it's $900 and some dollars a year. That's more than what it cost me previously to get it. Even though I was doing it every 3 years, paying $1,700, I was paying $600 or so. $600-700 every year, but now I'm paying more per year. And so Adobe saw that and they will, wait a minute, we'll do it this way. And I see that coming with more and more premium plugins. I'm hoping that they'll grandfather in people. I'm praying they will.
Most of them have been pretty good about grandfathering.
No. Only a small percentage of the ones that were honorable have been good about grandfathering in. Others have said,
my experience has been good then.
Your experience has been good. but a lot of them, it just said WooCommerce didn't initially. And then here's what
I forgot about that.
Here's what WooCommerce did. I had several licenses. I still have the licenses, and I log into my WooCommerce account from time to time. And the licenses are still there. But here's what they did. WooCommerce went, nope, no grandfathering. You got to rebuy all the licenses. And then the community went after them. And they went, all right, fine, we'll grandfather you in. But what they did over the next 3 years was they did away with that plugin. They quit supporting it. They said, we're no longer supporting this. We've reformatted it in such a way that we've had to rebrand it. They gave it a new name, and now you got to buy it again.
Yeah.
It was sneaky as fucking hell. Like, I still have those licenses. I went and looked at them. They're no longer supported. They haven't been supported for a couple of years. But yet we have this other option here, which does the exact same thing or similar. And now you got to buy it. And it's like $100 a year for the thing. It's like, yeah, you fuckers. So that's what they've done. They found a way around it to quit supporting it. So, and that was that's after Automatic bought WooCommerce. So that tells you how Automatic deals with people. They're backhanded and sleazy about it.
They're lawyers.
Yeah, they're not lawyers, but
but mentalities of lawyers.
Yeah,
and bean counters.
Maximizing their investment, and of course, because Automatic is mostly owned by venture capitalists, every time a company is owned by a venture capitalist, this happens.
Mm-hmm.
Which is what's going to happen to WP Engine eventually too. You know, I've got another example on that for my cPanel that I use on my servers. When cPanel was owned by a company that was really good and honorable, they honored all kinds of things and they kept improving. They sold out to a venture capitalist, and the venture capitalists have raised license fees every year for 3 years now. And that's because everyone needs it. You can't get away from it. There's nothing better, and you're kind of stuck. And they know it. They got you by the balls. And that was the thing with WooCommerce. Many of the people who have WooCommerce plugins, they have them by the balls until somebody writes a new plugin, writes a equivalent plugin that's better. Or
over the next year, with all this strong feelings that are being built up towards Automatic, I wonder how many people are going to go out of their way to write new plugins specifically to counteract all of the BS.
Oh, I'm willing to bet a lot it will. I will, as I run into things that are owned or created by Automatic, I will take their plugin and I will fork it and create what I need to work.
I have a feeling that's going to happen a lot.
Yeah.
Because like I was mentioning before, I've seen a lot of anger. I've seen a lot of people who are just completely bailing on WordPress. And then I see people who are staying in with WordPress, but they're bailing on the community. And they're not just bailing on the community, they're walking out while pulling all of the skeletons behind them to show the world the string of skeletons that are in the closet.
Yes.
Like, it's very interesting. They may be bailing on the community, but they're not bailing on the program itself, which I thought was kind of interesting, because usually when people bail on one, they bail on the other. But
well, you think about it with me. It's like I tried to bail on the program, but I couldn't because it's too good. In the end, you
despise the community, which
well, the thing is
not nice.
The community despises me. They threw me out of that community 6 years ago.
That's why you despise them.
I don't despise them. I do despise them. I find them. It's a mutual hatred now. It's like I tried to reason with them. Anyone who wants to know, go look it up on WP Plugins AtoZ. It's a big, humongous blog post about how they threw me out of the community in violation of their own rules.
Yeah,
they violated their own rules to throw me out of the community, and they continually do that. When they decide they don't like somebody, they violate their own rules to throw you out, and then they change the rules. Like, I had documented, screenshotted proof of how they changed the rules over the course of 2.5 hours to justify throw me out.
Yep.
It's like I screenshotted it, and then I went back and the rules had changed. I said, oh, I see how you did it. You decided to change the rules.
And
So-
that is a perfect example of how they deal with everything.
That's how they deal with it all. They're like, oh well, we had these rules. Oh, you mean you're abiding by? Well, wait a minute. The rules have changed. Here, you're violating the rules now. Out you go. So that's the whole problem of what's happened, and that's what happened. But yet they built such a fantastic program that it just does everything that needs to be done. Now, it could happen that somebody could find a way to keep with the rise of the new repositories. It could be somebody could fork whatever version of WordPress at the time and get that taken up by people who can use the alternate repositories with all the slew of plugins. If that
cool.
If that happens, Automatic will die.
Yeah.
So that is an option I hadn't considered till just now. That is an option that is possible when the new repositories arise. We know one has risen.
Mm-hmm.
That means more are coming, because like any other good idea, if one person has it, a dozen people have it. And of the dozen that have it, 3 to 5 of them are capable of following through on it.
So that brings us back to my idea of WordPress dying. When I think of WordPress, I'm thinking of Matt. I'm not really thinking of the program itself.
So,
I think that's my problem there, is when I think of the name WordPress, I'm thinking of Matt. I'm not thinking of the program. I think that's something that I need to fix in my brain.
What you need to fix in your brain is you're thinking of Automatic.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of. Okay.
Automatic, which owns WordPress.com, which is constantly confused with WordPress.org or the freestanding version of WordPress. They're constantly confused. And so, so what you have to just think of it as Automatic. You think of the things as Automatic. Yes, Automatic could be dying. Yes, Automatic could die, and WordPress.com could die. Because if someone...
they do.
What's that? Well, I sort of helped it.
They do. I don't like WordPress.com. I've tried using it, and I just... Nope.
Yeah, well, WordPress.com is pure Gutenberg now. Nothing but. But that's what he was trying to keep alive, was WordPress.com. His business was being eaten up by Wix and Squarespace and the others. And WordPress.com competes directly with Wix and Squarespace. Because Wix and Squarespace are mostly blogging platforms.
Mm-hmm.
Easy, free to use. People sign up and it's like, oh, here, pick your shit, put it all over here, pick what you want to do, blah, 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 which is what WordPress.com is. And WordPress.com was competing with them as far as layout goes, because WordPress.com was dependent upon themes, and themes in WordPress.com were not always easy to manage or design as they were in WordPress.org using the classic editor.
Okay.
And so that's why he pushed Gutenberg, was for WordPress.com. He didn't push it for the freestanding version. He pushed it. Everything Matt does is for WordPress.com. It has nothing to do with what all the rest of us have built our business around. All the rest of us have built our businesses around WordPress.org or the open source version, freestanding version of WordPress. Everyone else has built their business around that. Matt has built his business around WordPress.com.
You see, I didn't know that little bit, actually.
Oh, okay.
That bit of information. I had no idea. Like, I knew that he owned WordPress.com. I knew it sucked, but it hadn't occurred to me that him pushing Gutenberg was for his own personal WordPress.com business.
Everything he pushes into the core benefits WordPress.com. Nothing he pushes into the core is a pure benefit for us, but it's an absolute benefit for him. He doesn't think about us, the people who contribute the most to WordPress, making it work and contributing in many ways. Like most of the people who contribute to the core don't work for Automatic. They just they join the committees to help it work.
Yeah.
But everything he allows, like everything that gets into the core, is approved by him. And the only things he lets into the core benefit WordPress.com. Nothing like people have tried for more than a decade now to get improvements into the media library, into the core. Yeah. But he refuses to do it.
A couple things have changed, but not really.
They've been so minor, it's been irrelevant. But we've tried to get things, the community as a whole has tried to get things pushed into the core that would benefit all the rest of the community, but aren't a major benefit to WordPress.com. So they never get into the core. So, and that's the way it's worked since the beginning. In the beginning, it wasn't overly a worry to it until he crammed Gutenberg down everyone's throat. That's when everything really started to change, was when he crammed Gutenberg down our throats.
Yeah, that not only pissed off a lot of people, that also made it much harder for a lot of people to do what they're doing.
Yeah.
And it made it harder for newbies to get involved too.
Yeah, the only savior in that was Elementor. And there's actually, I have a chart in here from, where was that information? There it is. I have a chart, like there's a couple of articles in here that I forgot to mention here. It's from one's from CrowdPress about WordPress isn't WordPress anymore. And it talks about it being the go-to platform, trends, not drama, the essence of WordPress, a lean core with boundless extensibility, which we've talked about extensively tonight. Yeah. The flexibility at its core, which we've talked about extensively, is the flexibility. And the new direction, core features versus plugin territory. And the thing is what made WordPress so beautiful was they did have a very clean core, very simple. Everything else was taken up with a plugin. And that's what everyone said about Gutenberg. It should just be a plugin. It should not be in the core. Because let people choose. If they want it, yes, put it in. But they crammed it into the core. Because keeping the core very lean allowed people to build anything they could imagine.
Yes. And
that's the whole thing, features in the wrong places. But what's interesting is Yoast from Yoast SEO, he's a really great guy. He does interesting stuff. I wish I had gotten him as an interview back when he was in the beginning, when he would have talked to a plebe like me. It's a lot of, I've talked to a lot of people over the years. Some of them have become elite and they no longer even acknowledge my existence. They probably wish I'd take down their interview.
Oh, probably.
But Yoast looked at WordPress's market share. Go click on the link to this thing here. And I'm not going to bother. We're just going to keep our one image, because for those that see this on YouTube, we're just going to keep the one image up here. But there's a link in here. But he shows the increase and decrease of Magento, Drupal, Joomla, and PrestaShop as far as their share and their market usage since 2018. And every one of them has dropped over time. And then it shows WordPress's usage, which has increased over that time. But what he also did was he showed in here Webflow, Squarespace, Wix, and Shopify, and their increases over time, and how much increases they accumulated, starting in 2018, the same time Gutenberg was crammed into WordPress. Actually, I think it was 2019 when it was crammed into WordPress, 2018-19. But then one of the interesting things he did was he showed Elementor's growth versus WooCommerce versus WordPress usage. And Elementor started growing dramatically shortly after Gutenberg was introduced. And it's been continuing to grow. And that's because... That
makes a lot of sense, actually.
Because once you install Elementor, Gutenberg is overridden, and you no longer have to look at it.
Yes, I think that's the biggest reason why. Every time I come across something that sells Gutenberg showing, it's jarring.
Yeah, it's very jarring.
I use Classic Editor and Elementor, and anything without that view, it's jarring. It's like going into a different universe entirely.
Yeah. And even the WordPress site editor, the regular editor, has increased a little bit since Gutenberg. It's a really interesting article that he wrote, breaking down some of the stuff he needs about the underlying APIs and a whole bunch of information. So we've got a lot that's happening. But in the end, our predictions for this, or my prediction for this, is that WordPress isn't going anywhere, not for a long time, but there is some dramatic changes on the front coming. One is the rise of the various repositories. One, that someone out there is going to realize they need to force the ability into WordPress for people to choose their repository that they download from. And the other, what was the other one? I had the third point I'd made. The plugins aren't going anywhere. I had something else, but and yourself, I think we've been at this an hour now, so I think we should just wrap this up.
We should. I think that what's going to happen is, as we discussed, it's actually automatic. I think it's going to die out. I think that when the different repositories are going to be popping up, I think that people need to be careful, because I think that I'm pretty sure the scammers and everyone are going to take advantage of those. It's going to take a bit for people to figure out what's safe and what's not. And I do think that somebody's probably going to figure out how to make essentially a plugin that makes it possible for you to upload plugins through that plugin, like a plugin that attaches to the repository, and you can just use that as like a streaming thing.
Yeah, well,
I think that's probably what's going to end up happening.
Yeah, there's a lot of possibilities. So, at any rate, I think that's it, folks. We will call it that. We'll let our girl take us out, and we'll be talking to you real soon, a couple of weeks from now, with our regular show schedule starting again in the new year with every other Monday. And make sure you join us. With that, let our girl take us on out.
Reminders for the show. All show notes can be found at WP Plugins AtoZ.com. And while you're there, subscribe to the newsletter for more useful information delivered directly to your inbox. WP Plugins AtoZ is a show that offers honest and unbiased reviews of plugins created by developers because you support the show. Help keep the show honest and unbiased by going to WPPluginsAtoZ.com/donate and set the donation level that fits your budget. Help us make the show better for you by subscribing and reviewing the show at Stitcher Radio, Google Play, and in the iTunes Store. You can also leave us a review on our Facebook page using WPPluginsAtoZ.com/Facebook. You can also watch the show live on YouTube, check out the screencasts and training videos, and remember to subscribe and hit the bell to get notifications of all new videos. Follow the show on Twitter at WP Plugins A-Z. John can also be reached at his website, johnoverall.com, or email him directly, john@wppro.ca. Thanks for joining us, and have a great day.
Thanks for listening to the show. This show is copyright by johnoverall.com. So until next time, have yourselves a good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you happen to be out there on the globe today.